All right. Hey, YouTube. I am Uriah Kaiser. This is PLN Live. I am the publisher of Potomac Local News, and joining us today on our live stream is Dr. Bob Schneider. He is the executive director of OmniRide. It's the transportation agency that provides service to Prince William County, cities of Manassas and Manassas Park, and now Stafford County as well. Dr. Schneider, thanks for coming on and talking with us
Absolutely.
today. You've been on here before. We always enjoy these video chats that we share. This time, I think it's been about a year since we last did this, and what a difference a year makes. We find ourselves in phase 3 in the recovery phase of.
I'm here to talk about murder hornets.
We thought murder hornets were going to be a bigger deal than they really were, but that's all we need is murder hornets on top of everything else. But things are looking better than they were back in the dark days of March and April. We are now about to end July, heading into August, and the buses are running again. So if you would kind of bring us up to speed on where OmniRide is serving its customers.
Yeah, where we are today is we're about 85% of our normal schedule Monday through Friday. When I say we're Monday through Thursday, our customers and those in the community know we operate a reduced schedule on Fridays. People are off on Fridays or they're teleworking on Fridays. So we're normally about 85% of our service on Fridays that we are Monday through Thursday. That's the service level we're at right now, Monday through Friday. And it's allowed us to do some good things. Number one, we're able to maintain the fleet. It makes it a little easier for operators who, our drivers, they're operators because they do a whole lot more than drive. They're operating technology systems, they're operating a big honking vehicle. So we think of them that way, but they've got family needs, they've got childcare needs. So it gives us a lot of flexibility, but it also gives us flexibility for our passengers as we're not putting 53 to 57 people on a bus every single time. So we're still able to meet the needs of our customers, even though our ridership's a bit lower. We're able to still give people space to sit, wear their mask, but still enjoy their iPad as they cruise into DC with us, or maybe head into Roslyn.
We are on YouTube right now, and of course, our chat is open. Do you take OmniRide to work? Have you been on the buses since the pandemic had, and now that we're into phase 3 of pandemic recovery, if you will? What are your thoughts of taking public transportation in the post-COVID world? What have you seen? Are your buses clean? Are your drivers friendly? Are the buses running on time? Are they half full or a fraction of what they used to be? We want to hear from you. Please leave your comments in the chat, and if we get some good questions, we may even ask Dr. Bob about what you're seeing out there. So can you just give us so the service is back up and running, and we are about 85% of where we were. In terms of ridership, are we seeing the same I guess the same routes that were busy before being those that are busy today, or have you seen a difference in the number of riders on different lines?
It really is now. Let me think about this a little bit. The shift is really with the Pentagon and those essential agencies that have more security issues where the people physically need to be somewhere to conduct business. That has been part of what's driven it. One of our most successful routes over the past year and a half has been out of Haymarket. 4 trips in the morning, 4 trips in the afternoon, almost every bus completely full, fantastic service, booming. Within a 14-day span, it was down to 2 people a day. That's an example of going from 258 individuals down to 4. That's the big gap. But on other routes, for example, Horner Road to Pentagon, we really did see consistent ridership and the same people showing up every day. So that's what's driven it. I think the public sector there's certain things you must be present for. Federal agencies, essential focus. And if you think back to a year and change ago, we had the federal shutdown. The entire federal government shut down, and only essential workers were going. However, we had ridership still at 85% of normal. So despite that big shift, we really saw pretty hardy ridership over that, about 45-day period. So it was really interesting for us in that we're always going to have that core group of passengers who need to be in DC or need to be in Arlington or Crystal City because their duty demands it. And that's one of the unique things about Northern Virginia. It's a very duty-bound profession. in
Have
what
you
we do.
seen, so is there any indication that the type of rider, the pre-pandemic has changed post-pandemic, where maybe before you had a white collar worker headed into a government office, but maybe now you have a blue collar worker who's an essential
We are
employee?
actually, we are seeing that, especially on the construction side, things like that, where maybe there's just not as easy access to where they need to go. But and maybe they've always been there, but they were blended in. Right now, what you're seeing is they're showing up every single day. They are that essential worker. And now what we're seeing is they're a higher presence of that because they have to have that physical space. They have to physically be where they need to be. You can't virtually pour concrete. You
Talk to me
know,
about your layout of the buses and how people are sort of sitting. I've been on crowded buses before, pre-pandemic,
yeah,
and some of them, were very packed. Some, not always, and of course, in larger cities, when you're in New York City, you'd be lucky to get a seat, right, on some of
right.
these buses. So, but what on an OmniRide bus today, on an OmniRide Express bus, which is your commuter buses? Is it how are people seated, and what's the mood on those buses when they're rolling?
So basically, we blocked off the first two rows right behind the driver for the health and safety of the operator. I mean, that's the goal. It's number one, keep everyone healthy and safe. Our employees are exposed to the environment all day, every day. So we want to do everything we can to take care of them. And by the way, taking care of the customer begins with our employees, our workforce. So we've implemented inside the building enhanced cleaning protocols. We have PPE for employees. We have gloves. We have masks. We have sanitizer. So we're cleaning the vehicles when they come in for the morning run. When they get cleaned, obviously at night. We've been doing enhanced cleaning since January.
And what does
We're
that
ahead
look
of the
like when you
curve.
say enhanced cleaning? How does that differ? First of all, what is it, in terms of the steps that you take, and how do they differ from what you were doing before?
So normally what we would do on a commuter bus is, because it's only having X number of people per day, it's not getting all day use. We would do light cleaning every other day, deeper cleaning every other day. So kind of a schedule that balanced it out, unlike our local buses, which would get serviced every single day. Well, once the pandemic started to emerge, we had our first meeting on this January 27th. I mean, we were ahead of the curve, ordering sanitizer, and for us, it was more about, hey, we're going to battle the flu because who knows where this pandemic thing could go. But it was preparation. At that time, we started acquiring some of the deeper cleaning materials that were associated with the H1N1 virus about 10 years ago. And throughout February and March, we learned about things like it's not just wiping down a surface, but spraying with the disinfectant and letting it sit. We've added cleaning protocols to our ventilation systems that we historically didn't do. We would do them on routine maintenance, but we weren't doing them as frequently. Uh, so enhanced cleaning is not just the frequency, but also improving the chemicals that we use to safely clean for disinfecting purposes. But beyond that, so that's all just to get the vehicle ready. Then once we're at that park and ride lot, or even in our local service, we don't want to forget about that. But that when we hit that park and ride lot, the first couple of seats are blocked off, and then we've got don't sit here type signage and please sit here type signage. That way we're steering people, because our drivers have been very helpful, amazingly helpful in helping identify these are the patterns, these are the things we see. We put together a work group internally for our building, and then a separate work group for how to manage the transit circle, how to effectively manage space for customers. And we have limitations on the number of passengers per trip. So all of those things are put in place based upon the physical distancing requirements, as well as what our customers have told us they want and they're looking for. So those
So
are all different
when I
things.
get on a bus, I see that the first two rows are blocked off, and I can't sit there. Obviously, that triggers. It's an immediate indication that things are not the way they used to be.
Correct.
But I imagine that that your organization may have put in some changes that are not as apparent to the public. What might some of those be?
That's the cleaning. That's what people just aren't going to see. They're not going to see our additional cleaning crew that's here during the midday. They're not going to see the swap out of our local routes when the buses pull in and we pull a bus and put up one that's been recently cleaned. For them, they're just boarding that vehicle. They're not seeing all the other things that go into place. One thing customers do see is we're cashless now on our commuter services. and we're fare free on our local services. So for those people who have the smart trips, if they're used to putting cash and loading their card, we don't do that anymore. You have to do it online. So that's one thing someone would see. But if you've been hitting that tap card for years, you're really not going to notice that difference. But those are little things that you see and don't see depending on what your individual rider experiences. Other things you're not seeing is how we go about training. Again, how we in the building work with each other. The rules we have for wearing your mask in public spaces, the rules we have for sanitizing, those are all things that are happening at the facility, and our customers don't experience that behind the gate, so to speak. And so a lot of emphasis and attention on that. Some things you would see is when you do go to that park and ride lot, we were ahead of the curve, and we, just like your local Walmart or Sheetz, we have the tape every 6 feet so passengers can stay apart. We do provide PPE. A lot of our customers bring their own, but if a customer boards and forgot their mask, we got you covered. It's okay. We've got plenty. Matter of fact, that giant pile of boxes over there are just masks. So my office is kind of the storehouse of PPE. And
It's
glad
good
to
that you're utilizing all your space there at
Yes.
OmniRide. Yeah,
Yes.
that is good. So obviously masks are a requirement on the bus. And it just seems that people have just taken to them, right? You can't go in a grocery store or a Target or the shopping mall without seeing masks. Has this been an issue for any of your operators requiring these of the passengers?
So our approach is we really want you to wear a mask, but we're not going to mandate it. We're not going to throw you off the bus, et cetera. But we have them for you. So please wear one, because we don't want conflict. That's what we don't want more than anything else. And there were some early examples in Philadelphia, Seattle, where people were thrown off the vehicle or denied access on a train. And then the police were called and it escalated. That's not what we're about. We just want people to get where they need to go. Most people that show up and don't have a mask just don't have a mask. So we want to give them one. That's the goal. We have branded, we have non-branded, and they're yours to keep. So they're cloth masks. So you can take it with you, take it home, wash it. You need 2, we'll give you 2. You need 5, let us know, we'll mail you some. We just want people to wear that face covering. It keeps our customers safer, keeps our employees safer. And to your point, Northern Virginia has taken to the face covering.
Yeah,
it's just part of the routine. Again, we talked about a little bit just in the few minutes chatting before this. There's a certain sense of duty and value. And Northern Virginia is an unbelievably intelligent community across the board. And our residents come from all over the world.
and we are seeing the number of cases in Northern Virginia, as well as hospitalizations, decline. Whereas in the eastern part of Virginia, in the Hampton Roads area as well, we're seeing that number tick up a little bit.
Right.
And so, but again, the point of this conversation, we talked about where we're going to go, and hopefully in Northern Virginia that number stays low. We continue to hear from federal officials in the White House that there is a V-shaped recovery still on track. We're still hearing good economic numbers, people who are going back to work and people who are shopping and spending money. And so right now you're operating, you said, at 85%.
Right.
What are the discussions going on right now within OmniRide about increasing that capacity if it becomes necessary and when it becomes necessary?
Right. So for now, we have plenty of capacity availability. So that extra 15% really drives more of a frequency. So instead of having 20 trips on a route out of Horner Road, we're sitting at maybe 13. We can easily migrate those in and be very flexible on that. But what it does is it allows us, because we're not at capacity now, it gives us plenty of time for passengers to come back. So what we're doing is we're watching our ridership on every day, where we're tracking it daily, but we're really looking at it as, what does the last 2 weeks look like? We believe that post Labor Day will be the single biggest impact. That what we see immediately following that Labor Day window will tell us, okay, because that's when the kids are back in school, right? That's when the patterns, people aren't on vacation anymore. That's when we really think we'll see what the future will hold in terms of ridership and the growth for us. then probably by about October 1, we'll know what it looks like. The flip side is people could say, nope, this is working out really well for our family. The federal agencies are working. The private sector is enjoying this. We may see an actual just deflation of commuter patterns. But there's a couple of different things. Number one, what drives transit is generally two factors, especially for commuter services like us and for VRE. Parking availability. So if people stop riding transit in DC and they start driving their cars more, that's going to strip away even more parking. So parking is always going to be at a premium in Washington, DC. Recent article was even written how Union Station's going to do some work, and they've put in a massive parking structure with that. So they're getting beat up over the influence of parking. Less parking, less parking, less parking. The second thing is if everyone drives, traffic is really, really, really bad. Even if only half the people are still going into DC, it's still a lot of human beings in a long line of traffic. That won't change. So there's always going to be that need for transit to be there. VRE, us, Metro, Fairfax Connector, the whole package. What could be different is you may not have the crushing loads that we see of service every 8 minutes pouring out of Horner Road. You might see service every 15 minutes, and plenty of available space for commuters, and just a different experience. That might be more of what you see. The flip side of that is, as that happens, part of this is we don't know what the impact is going to be on slugging, right? It's one thing if you believe and you trust in us cleaning our vehicles every day. That's awesome. But do you really trust climbing inside my Subaru? That's a whole different conversation as to whether or not I've done my part as the driver and you climbing into the vehicle to slug into DC with me. So we could see a mode shift there that's just as much transit utilization, even though you might have fewer people pushing through the corridor because of the reduction on slugging. What that could also do is people who still must drive every day for whatever reason, now you could see an increase in toll revenues, possibly, because you're going to see the reduction in the carpools. You could potentially see increase in van pools, because I trust my coworkers and my colleagues because I know them. That might be something that supplements slugging or replaces the concept of slugging, is the emphasis on van pools. So those are some of the things that we're looking at in terms of where's OmniRide going to go with this? Well, we're having people calling us to say, I used to slug. How does this work? I'm interested in putting a van pool with my office mates so that we can drive in together versus driving alone. That's a bit of what we're starting to see through our customer service.
It's interesting that the transit system in our region has worked sort of to ferry people into the urban core, right? From the suburbs downtown into Washington, and whether you take the bus or Metro or VRE or Slug, that's where they're headed. But in recent years, OmniRide has talked about diversifying the types of services that it offers. One of them, which always sticks out in my mind, is that Uber-like service that is still being worked on, as I understand, at OmniRide, to ferry people from their front door to a commuter lot where they could catch an OmniRide Express bus to get where they're going. And that's sort of a different operation or a different type of service that we're used to seeing from OmniRide, which typically, again, ferries people from Prince William County, Manassas Park, and now Stafford to Washington, D.C., and then home again, back to their home county. With the changes and more people working from home, there's a possibility that we're hearing a third of the workforce may not return to the office. Do you think will push the needle for more of these Uber-like services, instead of taking people from point A to point B being the core, to around town, or maybe from suburb to suburb?
Right. So a good example of that is, if I ride into DC, I still have to have my car, and I have to drive my car 5 days a week from my house to the park and ride lot. Let's assume it's 15 minutes. Then I have to get out of my car and have to stand in line. And then I have to get on the transit vehicle. Then I have to ride into DC. Then I have to get off in DC and walk to my building. That's a lot of steps, admittedly, but that's what we choose when you live in Stafford, Spotsylvania, Prince William's, Front Royal, Richmond. I mean, people do this as part of their daily commute. 5 days a week sounds like a nightmare. You know what? I'm just going to drive. It's a lot of individual steps. I'm just going to drive. I'm going to fight the traffic. I'm going to do whatever. But now if it's only 2 days a week and you can do it and have the Uber experience, you've taken your car out of the equation. You've eliminated multiple steps on that. And now all that confusing part of that first mile, last mile trip kind of goes away. And now you're talking about only 2 days a week, or if your commute might be even longer because you're traveling a farther distance. It's not that big of a deal, because if you're decentralizing out of DC, let's say patent and trade, moving out of the core into, just an example, let's pretend they came to Prince William. If you live in Maryland, you're coming unglued. What do you mean I have to go all the way to Prince William just to, well, now it's only 2 days a week. That's manageable, right? The conversation changes because the expectations and the time commitment that we're so used to doing 5 days a week, you can now just spread that into 2, and it's actually less time. The other part of this I think we're going to see is now it's more laptops than desktops. I think we're going to see a deeper push for Wi-Fi on buses. I think we're going to see a deeper push for technology being available. That will be part of the equation, because now people can have that Zoom call on board a transit vehicle. Now, everyone around them doesn't want to hear it, but but the concept of you can do more with your time while you commute. So longer commutes could be one of the large patterns. Only traveling into the office 2 days a week could be one of the patterns. And then people who never travel into the office, not never, but once a month, are going to be a new pattern.
Yeah.
Those are 3 things we're looking at.
And those who are working, in our area, and then switch to once a month, they could be commuting from South Carolina.
Absolutely.
It really, really could. So it's maybe going to Richmond and catching a train from Richmond to DC or something like that, or maybe the Breeze bus, if you will. I know the Breeze service just relaunched. We've talked a lot about the express buses, which is OmniRide's bread and butter, ferrying those commuters back and forth. But the local buses are an integral part of what you do as well. And have you seen fewer changes in terms of ridership on your local buses than you have on your express buses, or are there big differences there as well?
There are some big differences. The first thing is I did not budge when it came to keeping our local services on the street. We have seen no change in terms of hours, days of week, operation, et cetera, because we don't offer a lot of local services to begin with. We have some run really well, but I did not want to reduce the access to that. And if you come stand with me in front of our transit facility, you'll see the nurses, you'll see the food service workers, hotel workers, but you'll also see construction, students. So the wide variety of people that keep Prince William especially going meet us, and their essential services, essential programs. So we are essential to that lifeblood for the community. We never reduced our services. The one thing we did is we made it fare free. And the reason we did that was the dwell time with the driver plus cash. Some of the early indications were that cash and coin could transmit COVID-19, and we didn't want to bring that into the building. But it's actually worked out well, in that now we've seen new passengers exploring with us, because now they don't have to wonder. We've taken a barrier to admission. Just if you've got some time, hop aboard, see where it goes. So we have seen new riders who historically wouldn't ride. What we've also seen is some passengers have just said, you know what, I'm not riding transit anymore. I'll figure out in a different way, because the healthcare concerns. So that's been part of it as well. So a lot of our trips are geared toward medical, social services type programs. We've seen more teledoc, so people don't have the same appointment going to medical. We've also seen people who do have the underlying healthcare conditions who are now just far more cautious to ride. Our ridership is about 75, 80% of what it was on our local services before. That doesn't account for a tremendous amount of our overall ridership. As you mentioned, commuter is our bread and butter, but our local services remain really our most dominant ridership base right now, and that's a very good thing. So part of the conversation will be is, if we do see a shift where maybe we don't have as many commuters, what does the local service ridership look like? What are the needs? Where are they going? And what could we do differently, and retool those dollars and potentially put that into our local service instead?
I want to bring in the 7-story parking garage that is being built, or the plans for it will be built for at Wegmans. It's Stonebridge at Potomac Town Center,
Right.
I should say. 1,400 spaces, 7 stories, uh, and it sounds like there will be some shifting from the transit center, which serves as a main hub, a transfer hub for different bus lines. It could be shifted over to this parking garage. It could be the new center of OmniRide operations, at least in the eastern section of Prince William County.
Yes. We really wanted to do something different. We used to have our, I believe, long before I got here, we had our park and ride. Our transit center was over at the Potomac Mills Mall area, and they're like, okay, you need to do it differently. So we built the circle. If you've been to our facility multiple times, there's no well lit sidewalk accessible area where if you're traveling down Route 1 for some unknown reason, if you have to go over I-95 to turn and go down what is a very narrow 2-lane road that 2 buses can't pass each other easily without snapping off mirrors, past a VDOT location into the circle. It's one of the most inconvenient locations for transit facilities I've seen but that was because that's what we had to have, because that's all we had. With this parking garage, it gives us the ability to move those transfers to a different location and be far, far more convenient for passengers. And it actually speeds the route up. The amount of time our local routes spend just driving out of the way to get here is kind of inefficient. And so that's an opportunity for us to do better. And the other thing that'll be interesting is with that parking garage, one of the questions I was asked was, well, isn't that kind of pointless to build that now? No, because it's going vertical.
You actually took
And
the next question right out of my mouth. So go ahead.
um,
Yeah.
but if that can replace the 234 lot, or that can replace a chunk of Horner Road, think of the availability and access of land that you can do something completely different with. We just read about a new food services organization coming to Prince William right around the corner from Horner Road. Now what you have is you have more land availability for employment and development if you're able to have park and ride lots that aren't well used anymore. Right over in the Lake Ridge community, there's an old park and ride lot that has now been transformed. They're going to move it into a park. So those are all different examples of how, yep, there it is, the International Gourmet Foods. Think of
Right
the
there,
land use
and Horner Road is the state's
right
largest
there.
commuter
Yeah.
lot. It is literally abuts the commuter lot. It really does.
So to turn around and say, hey, that parking deck frees up land, that's a game changer in terms of what the economics could be for Prince William. So doing things like building a garage might seem, well, that's pointless now. Actually, it changes everything, because now what you're able to do is have high density development possibilities with its own dedicated off ramp onto hot lanes. How awesome is that? So those are the examples of things that Prince William County can now sell from an economic development standpoint and still have great transit access.
Well, obviously things aren't slowing down for you and your team there at OmniRide. You have a new bus operator, Keolis, the same firm that operates the Virginia Railway Express trains, is now operating your buses. Do you see opportunities for collaboration there, or do you see more efficient operation because of that, or is this just it was time to go with somebody different?
Really, it was so much is changing in the environment with opening our Western facility, with the growth and expansion. It was time to redo the contract. So then it was, okay, open bid. And Keolis is a relatively new player in the market. They've been around in terms of various forms and functions, especially in Europe, but they're relatively new to the market in the US. But the people that are running the company have been in transit in the US for decades. So it's not, they're not a startup inventing transit. And what really stood out is they focus on employee communication, culture, but also community engagement. And those two things are really pillars of what they bring. And that's not to say that our current contractor, First Transit, doesn't have those, but Keolis wears it on its sleeve. It's emblazoned on what they do. And they're just brought a different approach and a different energy to the opportunity. And so they'll start November 1st, November 2nd, whatever that first service Monday is. But until then, we're thrilled to work with First Transit. We're very thankful for the work they've done. dedicated employees who almost universally will just go work for Keyless, in terms of the drivers, mechanics, et cetera. So
well, we are all hopeful for a safe recovery and getting back to work and getting back on the bus and wherever the bus
absolutely.
may take us now, whether we're going back into the office or whether we're taking the bus maybe to go shopping, right? Instead of maybe trying a different bus ride around town. Dr. Schneider, thanks you so much for coming on PLN Live and discussing with us this big ongoing topic about how we will continue to need to move people in our region despite the pandemic.
And thanks for the invitation to do this. Not a lot of organizations are looking at transit right now. Everything's about the health scare and all the other big issues. It's great that we still have media coverage on what is mobility in the region. So thank you for your commitment to doing that.
Indeed. Thank you, sir. And everybody else, thanks so much for joining us today. We've had a series of live streams today. We'll be live again Wednesday night at 9 p.m. We'll be talking with Rich Anderson. He's a former member of the Virginia House of Delegates from Prince William County. He is running to be the chairman of the Republican Party of Virginia. We'll have a conversation with Rich to see what he has planned should he be elected the chair of the Republican Party. That's it from Potomac Local News. Be sure to subscribe to our email newsletter if you do not already. You can get that by going to potomaclocalnews.com and signing up for our daily email. It's packed full of local news. It's the most informative thing you'll get about your community all day long, Monday through Friday at 5 a.m. Talk to you soon.